So, a lot of people don't know that all the Need for Speeds are connected, from Most Wanted to Carbon to Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2. I'm going to connect all of them for you. Give you the linear story. We're not talking about everything that happened after Carbon. The games after Carbon, we're not even finna talk about those. I'll probably do a part 2 depending on how well this do. So in the beginning, it all starts with Need for Speed Carbon. Everything takes place first in Need for Speed Carbon. Nikki was not only your mechanic, but she was your girlfriend also. That's important to remember. So in Carbon, you were meant to do a race. Now, you worked for Darius. Darius is this asshole. So Darius sets up a race with you, Angie 21st Street, Kenji Bushido, and Wolf TFK. So the race is pretty much a setup to for him to get more power, for you to take the blame and all the type of shit. So what happens is this guy alerts the police on the location and who's racing and all type of shit. All the other racers get pretty much obliterated by EMP. They're no longer able to race. They get caught. You are the only one allowed to escape, because I honestly, and they don't say this in the game, but I think he has some connects with the police, because why else would an undercover officer in a Chrysler 300 SRT8 let you escape down the alleyway, but not before receiving a bag that, not before Nikki gives you a bag that was switched by a guy that works for him. So Darius tells you to take his blue and silver Supra and get out of there, basically telling you to go ahead and scram, lay low until the heat dies off and shit like that. But it was just a ploy to get rid of you. Now comes the events of Underground. Now, in Underground, you run into a lady named Samantha, and you're pretty much on what I would consider the East Coast. I want to say Carbon is somewhere like in a Colorado sort of area. Now, in Underground, Samantha is basically helping you build reputation and do all type of things until you eventually race the East Siders and shit of that nature, and then you race a female and it's basically done. It's a pretty simple story. At the end of Underground, you get into this big accident because this guy got pissed that you wouldn't join his crew, and you get taken to Bayview. In Bayview, you continue to make a name for yourself and things of that nature until eventually you race the Caleb guy that caused your accident. After the events of Need for Speed Underground 2, he eventually gets his hands on a BMW M3 GTR that I want to say he built himself or maybe bought off of BMW. Which leads to the events of Need for Speed Most Wanted. Now, we already know the story on this. If you want a part 2 to this video, let me know. Hit that like. All right, guys, here's part 2. You guys asked and I'm going to deliver. You're going to love this. Listen carefully. All right. After the events of Need for Speed Underground 2, our player, or you can call him Ryan Cooper, basically used his money from the sponsorships, little sponsorships, the little magazines that paid him and shit like that, the races and shit like that. He basically controls Bayview at this point and decided to branch out. And I believe with that money that he gathered with all of that, from all them races and sponsorships, he went and bought the BMW M3 GTR, which leads to these events. So Ryan Cooper decides to take a trip to Rockport City. He runs into Mia Townsend. You and Mia have a quick little street race through Rockport City and whatnot, but before eventually running into this bozo and his partner, Sergeant Cross, and whoever this lady is, because don't nobody really knows her name. They eventually stop you and let Mia escape, mainly because she's an undercover officer, but we'll get to that part. So they let Ryan Cooper go due to some complaints about other racers, but not before giving you his infamous pinstripe with his fucking key. About 4 days before you run into Cross, you run into Ronnie McRae, who leads you to this asshole who doesn't want to race you because you don't have enough reputation and shit like that. So he sets you up with a race with one of his other guys, Peru Seto. And even though he has a fucking SLR McLaren Mercedes-Benz, you still mop the floor with this guy. Okay, so Ryan is basically building reputation at this point. He needs at least one more race before he can challenge Razor, who's always watching him. And eventually he comes across a guy named Adam Rogg. Now, if you pay attention to Rogg's dialogue in Need for Speed Most Wanted, he states, and I quote, "Look what the underground has dragged in. Let's see how good you do in the daylight." meaning Rog knows him personally or had raced him back in Bayview. Whatever the case may be, Rog knows who Ryan Cooper is from somewhere in his past. You eventually beat Rog and you run back into this asshole who, and I'm going to sum this up so we can get to the next part. All right, shit. Basically, him and his guys set your car up to have an oil leak at the line. Now, don't know how the hell he was able to do that in the little time frame that he had, but you lose the race. Get arrested by these assholes who don't have enough evidence to keep you, so you get basically released sometime later. So you get out of jail and she helps you work your way up the Blacklist to stop Razor, get your car back from Razor, who used your car to get all the way up to the top. You beat Razor, but he doesn't want to give up the key. She gets your key back after body slamming Razor, but then these assholes show up again. Comment part 3 if you want part 3 of this amazing story.
Good to see you. Been a while.
All right, part 3. After you beat Razor and get your car back, try to get your car back, Razor doesn't want to give you your shit back. So this shit happens. She takes her keys back, and when Razor tries to snatch them back from her, she body slams the shit out of him. He gives you the keys, and suddenly the cops roll up. Turns out that Mia was an undercover cop who was sent to go like deep undercover, flush out the Blacklist, and basically everybody that you raced got arrested afterwards. So you were the only exception. The warehouse, the safe houses and everything, the police already knew about those. They just weren't going to fuck with you because you sort of was going undercover with Mia. You just didn't know about it.
Everyone.
So at this point, you're running from Cross because Mia let you escape, but she basically tells Cross he got away. And boy, he sends every unit after you. Basically, every Rockport police officer from level 1 to 6 is after you. You have hundreds of police cars after you. You have everybody in Rockport after you, dog. So Mia calls you as you're running from Cross. You're basically going in circles because, you don't know where else to go. But she hits you up on your phone and tells you that there's a construction site going on right now. There's a bridge being built and your car is fast enough to clear it. And thus giving you and all of us the most incredible scene in the entire Need for Speed franchise. Like, oh my God. Listen, in 2005, this was the most awesome scene that we had ever got, and probably will be the best scene. Dude, like, this shit was pure nostalgia growing up. But back to the story. Now, Ryan at this point gets away from Cross, and I want to say several weeks to almost months pass since his last run-in with Cross. We say this because Cross at this point is no longer with Rockport PD. He's now a bounty hunter. Ryan is minding his business. He's headed towards Palmont City, which takes place, ding, 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 here. In the events of Need for Speed Carbon. Now we're back at Carbon. Pay attention now. Cross chases you, and in the midst of the chase, you end up totaling your car, which puts you back in the sights of this damn guy. Ha! Good old Darius. If you want a part 4, let me know. I'll get it done in about 30 minutes. Hit me up.